It is cold up here at the North Pole, but there's toys to be loaded and reindeer to be fed as we help Santa get ready for his annual flight around the world. This is Vaguely Scientific. We are making pretty good time, so I should have a moment to step away and record this show. I am Derek, and Jim, with your science so vague, won't you co-host this podcast today?
Sure,
Hi, Jim.
yeah. I've never been allowed to do any reindeer games because I'm not a reindeer.
Well, unfortunately, this is still not that.
I don't want to do reindeer games. They seem dangerous.
Oh, okay. Joe, Merry Christmas. Hi, Joe.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah. It made me laugh, so I stuck it in there.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate it.
Nice. So this is the show where listeners send us the gift of some festive questions to hear our vaguely jolly answers. And who knows, we might even get some of those answers right. But first, it's time for the fun science fact of the holiday season, Jim.
Okay. This isn't about the North Pole, but it is about the South Pole.
That's close.
Yeah, it's a pole. It's about 8,000 miles away in the straight down direction.
It's literally as far away as you can get on Earth.
Yeah. Anyway, about 4,000 people live in Antarctica during the summer, and that number does dwindle down to about 1,000 in the winter, which is way more than I thought. I was going to think like, maybe a dozen or 24 people live down. Nope, it's a significant portion or a significant number.
Okay, so they like just move away for the winter?
Yeah, they would I presume go back to whatever home country they're from, because like nobody like is permanently a resident of Antarctica. It's like all science teams and stuff like that. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, it's there's a couple of facilities if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a couple different countries run different facilities and such, but I had no idea it was that many people. That is so many people.
That is a lot of people.
I guess it takes a lot because there's going to be medical people and engineers and like
scientists.
A lot of staff needed.
The penguin counter.
The penguin counter is very important because they do have penguins at the South Pole.
Yeah, not at the North Pole.
I applied to be a penguin counter at the North Pole, and
and you were laughed out of the room.
Yeah, they didn't hire me.
No,
that's a shame. It honestly would be a pretty easy job.
Yeah,
right? That's what I was thinking. I don't want to go to the South Pole and count penguins.
No.
That would be terrible.
That would take a long time.
It would, yeah. Well, I don't know what this was, but we should move on to our first question. Assuming that Frosty the Snowman's magic was partially powered by friendship or love, what other iterations of Frosty would we get with other emotions?
Ooh, I got a good one because I saw this movie. I saw this movie once for Riff Tracks reasons. Back in 1997, and it's important that I get the year right because in 1998, a totally different movie with the same name came out. Back in 1997,
I know what you're gonna say.
Oh, Jack Frost, yeah.
Yep.
So the 1997 Jack Frost is like a horror, but also kind of very silly and ridiculous kind of movie. Where a serial killer, he gets killed, but there's like a lab accident that goes on that sort of brings him back to life as a murderous snowman. So I just wanted to, just right out of the gate, I'm like, hatred and fury. That would be the emotion that would get you 1997 Jack Frost, whereas 1998 Jack Frost is about actual the concept of the person of Jack Frost that brings along cold weather and nips at your nose and stuff.
Yeah.
It's not even about a snowman,
Makes sense.
I don't think.
Well, the other Jack Frost was also about a person who died and inhabited a living snowman. So they're not that far away.
Oh, okay. They were also a snowman? I thought it was just like, I don't know.
Well, it was the story. I haven't seen it in so long, but it was, I think, a kid's dad, and he's like needs to get home for Christmas or something, or they have like a strained relationship, and so his unfulfilled, business is that he needs to reconnect with his son or something, and he inhabits the body of a snowman. And there's a scene where he's skiing, and it's not a good movie.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. It's Michael Keaton, so it has to be at least
was it
okay.
Michael Keaton? Okay.
The 1998 one, yeah, that was Michael Keaton and I think Kelly Preston. Was the female lead.
I may have seen it exactly one time, and very likely in 1998. So.
Now, what emotion is Michael Keaton portraying in that movie? Would that also be love, or would that be like?
I actually think that's more of like almost sorrow.
So yeah, it's okay. It's a sad movie. I mean, it's like just the premise alone is like that's a sad premise.
True. Yeah.
Because he was I think he was a musician. And then like he dies, and wants to like get home to his son, who's like depressed after his father's death.
Right. And that's why, like, I was making a huge guess. I knew that it was about him bonding with his son, but I was like, is it because they had a strained relationship or something like that? Like, I don't know.
Could it also be the very famous emotion of obligation?
Fair.
The emotion of obligation. Yeah. Yeah, I'd count that as an emotion, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's a very specific feeling.
Yeah. One of the things that I discovered as I was looking up different snowmen in media is that there is a TV tropes page about this. Not about like what emotion belongs to which snowman, but just like here's a list of every piece of media that has like a protagonist or antagonist snowman in it. And there are a lot of pieces of media where the snowmen are bad guys. Many video games have evil snowmen in them, including Kirby, as a matter of fact. When you eat them, you get the freeze power, which is very cool.
Yep.
Like many things in Kirby, it's hard to tell what the motivations of some of the bad guys are.
I was just about to say, it's like I have a hard time believing anything in Kirby is actually evil.
I mean, there are some, like, a lot of the final bosses are very definitively like, if not necessarily evil, then just like chaos.
Fair.
But the snowmen, they might just be obstacles. They might just not like Kirby, and they might just be in the way.
Yeah.
Kirby is a force of nature unto himself.
That is definitively true.
But speaking of video games, though, in I think it was Mario 64, there was the snowman on the one stage where his body's down on the bottom, and you have to roll his head down to the body. And I think that snowman embodies the emotion of gratefulness, or like being thankful for your help, because its head was, like half a zip code away from its body. That's just awful.
Well, speaking of other video games, let us not forget the most iconic of video game snowmen from the hit classic Clay Fighter, Bad Mr. Frosty.
Okay.
Who is not made of snow, but rather made of clay.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. What emotion is that one?
That's, I don't know, evil.
Yeah, that's fair.
Now
like cartoon villain.
Is Bad Mr. Frosty a bad guy in kayfabe, or just like for real?
Okay, so the little that I remember about it is that it I guess kayfabe is a good way of putting it. They don't have real lives, if that makes sense. So like if kayfabe, if you stripped away outside of the fighters' lives, they're still pretend.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not, like, he's not really evil. He's just he's an archetype.
Gotcha.
Like that's what I want to go with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
He's paid to be evil.
He's paid to be evil. He's like, that's his purpose, is to be evil. He has no motivation. He's just evil because that's what he is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm going to be honest with you guys. I took it a little bit of a different direction.
I think you're going to say, I took it too far.
I may have taken it too far.
Oh, I didn't even start deconstructing the question. I'm curious to see where you're going.
So I kind of took it as, I initially was actually taking it of, I'm going to look at it in the vein of like the Lantern Corps from DC Comics.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, that seems so overdone. Like I was gonna break down like what each of the Lantern Corps' Frosty would be like. And then I went, no, people have done that before.
Sure.
So I thought about it a little bit more, and I went, no, you know what? It's not the emotion that fuels Frosty directly. No. It's the hat.
Mm.
And so I actually posit that the hat decides the type of Frosty you receive.
Oh, interesting.
That is not terribly far away from where I was going to go, but continue.
Interesting. So I actually have a list that I built of Frosty's hats and then who that actually creates.
Oh, nice.
So of course, you have the classic, the old silk hat from the song, which is joy, and also I would argue mania. Because you put the hat on the snowman, he comes to life, and he starts running around town causing chaos, nearly causes a car accident. So Frosty the Snowman, joy and mania.
Mm-hmm.
But you put a beanie on that snowman.
Then he joins My Chemical Romance.
No, you get Frosty the Toker.
Oh, okay.
Who is the quintessential stoner, but also he's content with life.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say because like smoking weed's not an emotion, not yet anyway.
No, but you kind of get this contentness to him. Now you swap that for a beret, same material, but a little bit different way of wearing it.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, you get Glaciel the Snowman. Which is the French, very prideful and snooty.
Mm-hmm. Knows at least 5 types of cheese.
Oh, for sure. Then I saw a bowler hat. You know what I think of when I see a bowler hat?
The British.
British thievery. And greed.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get David Charles, a.k.a. the Cold Masher.
Ah. I bet, depending on how patient one needs to be, I bet a snowman would make a really good burglar.
Oh, for sure.
Please elaborate.
Oh, I'm just thinking, like, if they're able to melt and then reform, they would have to, like cut power to the house so that the house dips below freezing. But, like, if they're able to, like, melt themselves with a blowtorch and, like, ooze under the door and then inside the house be able to refreeze, then they'd be in. There would be no problem at all. Don't have to break a window. Don't have to bust a lock.
I don't even think he would necessarily care about that because he's a snowman. I think he's gonna break the window, chuck his arm in. Mm-hmm. The arm's gonna crawl and unlock the door.
Let's be careful with our phrasing of I don't think he'd care because he's a snowman, because why is he burglarizing this house then?
Because he's wearing a bowler hat.
Yeah. The other thing that I think is worth exploring here is the fact that if he breaks a window, then, I mean, he's a snowman. He's not going to cut himself. He has no blood.
Exactly. And then all the police are going to find is a trail of water.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like that puzzle with there's just a puddle of water on the ground.
Yeah, you stab someone with an icicle.
I've got 3 more.
Okay.
So then there's, you swap out that bowler hat for a fedora.
Mm-hmm.
You get a neckbeard, Frosty.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say a gangster.
No.
So when you say fedora,
I'm getting there.
Mini rant coming. I'm sorry, but when you say fedora, I want to say probably what you're picturing is actually a trilby. Whereas fedoras are more wide brimmed and would be more iconic of the gangster that Jim is thinking of.
That's fair. That is fair. But as far as
speaking of neckbeards,
as far as his name, this will probably be lost on the two of you. But if anyone who's listening to this watches Smosh, he's just the Chosen but cold.
I've never heard of Smosh.
It's a YouTube channel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know of them.
There's a recurring character on it by one of the actors on it who's called the Chosen. It's actually a very funny character. I highly recommend looking it up. Some of their skits with him are quite funny.
But he's not cold.
Correct.
Okay.
So this is just the Chosen, but cold.
Important distinction.
Yes. So then I had a see-through visor. So the like clear plastic visors.
Okay.
And for some reason, I decided that this turns him into like a Vegas pit boss.
That makes sense.
And his name becomes, "Hey, it's Frosty, I'm walking here."
His name is that whole phrase.
Yes.
That's amazing.
I am on board for that.
Yeah.
And lastly, you put a Balmoral bonnet on him, and he becomes Sean Connery.
Oh.
And then, specifically, he becomes Sean Connery, playing Sean Connery as Frosty the Scottish Snowman. Like, that's his name.
That.
Sean Connery playing Sean Connery as Frosty the Scottish Snowman.
I would absolutely watch that. Like, I don't know why that's not being made as we speak. Hopefully, after this episode comes out, somebody will pick it up.
I have a couple guesses, but we'll move on.
I also have a few guesses on that.
I mean, the only guess I could think of is that so far you're the only one who's thought of it, and we need to make sure that now other people know of it so that it can happen.
Yeah, that's the reason.
Yeah, definitely has nothing to do with the man himself.
I mean, someone can just impersonate Sean Connery. I know he's dead.
So this is not, I mean, thematically, you went in a different direction than me, but it's really not as far away philosophically as I think. And I want to harken back to the mention of the Beanie and Jim saying smoking weed is not an emotion.
Sure.
Because, because that phrase kind of, like I said, I have a tendency to want to deconstruct questions like this. And I start, especially whenever I see a question worded like assuming this, etc. I'm like, why are we assuming this? I don't want to assume this. Let me be argumentative. But then that kind of leads me down to, I think we already touched on it a little bit. Joe, you mentioned it we could have explored the Green Lantern Corps type of like what tropey version of Frosty could we make if he was this instead of whatever.
Right.
And then I was thinking, so we are assuming then that not only does the magic come from this power source, we're also assuming that has defined his personality, which are two separate things. And so I'm thinking, and I guess I'm going to tie in Monsters, Inc. a little bit here, because I think Frosty is his own self. I think Frosty the Snowman is a unique individual snowman who could theoretically be brought to life with other power sources, be they magic hats, emotions, or what have you.
Okay.
But I think he'll always be Frosty. But if you make another snowman, that snowman will have their own unique personality.
Oh.
Okay.
Like children.
That's why. Yeah, and that's like, whoa, like people. I'm sorry. But that's why when Jim was like saying, oh, well, specifically the reference you made, smoking weed is not an emotion. It's a character trait that we tend to reduce people to, right? So that's kind of what got me thinking is I think if Frosty the Snowman were powered by something other than friendship and love, let's say Frosty the Snowman was powered by the only thing more powerful than friendship and love, which is spite.
Yeah. I mean,
I think he would still be Frosty, but he would have a varying level of power, right?
Mm-hmm.
So much like the screams of children in Monsters, Inc. is not an efficient fuel source. The joy and laughter of children, they still power the same things, but they find out that they can actually accomplish more because it's a better power source.
Yeah.
So there's my deconstruction.
I like it. I think that's a really interesting point, and that is, I think, very similar to the direction I went.
We branched off, but we started in the same place, I think.
Yeah. Mine just went more for the hat is what defines the personality versus and technically and the power source, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, the note on that I thought was interesting is that Frosty the Snowman is a cartoon character, right?
Right.
And how often, I just thought it was an interesting philosophical thought experiment. How often are there an artist's art style will draw a very similar, let's tie it back to Kirby. Hey, why not?
Yeah.
There is a Waddle Dee in at least one of the Kirby games that has a spear and a bandana.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that makes that Waddle Dee unique is that it has those props.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it looks like every other Waddle Dee. And that's a very common thing for us to do when we're personifying characters is identify them by their accessories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's very fun.
That Waddle Dee has become a sort of main character now.
I'm vaguely aware of that. Yeah.
He has his own Nendroid figure, even.
Wait, really?
Oh yeah, I have it.
That's why you take when I'm building a snowman, they are virtually always the same thing, except I put a different hat on them or a different scarf or something. And
yeah.
That kind of leads me to wonder, since I typically would use the same things from year to year, have I just always built the same snowman?
Ooh. Okay. Now comes here comes a bit of a philosophical thing. The answer to me is no.
Okay.
Because the water that formed the snow that you used is not the same.
Right, right.
You may and it's a very similar thing to, I'm going to use the kind of Judeo-Christian dogmatic statement here of dust to dust. So
interesting.
From dust we are born, to dust we return. But ultimately, the dust that makes me up will eventually make someone else up, but that won't be me.
That's fair. Oh, I have two. I want to go in both directions here because I have one, the ship of Theseus thing that we always bring up.
I love discussing the ship of Theseus, so I'm on board with whatever argument you want to make.
So you, Joe, are still Joe, despite that the commonly misunderstood but technically true idea that every particle that makes you up is now different than it was 20 years ago.
Sure.
So there's that argument, but then the other place I want to go is, which is also still kind of a Judeo-Christian thought experiment to a little bit, but the idea of digitally cloning yourself. The idea of even if you use the same hat and scarf, and even if you theoretically could use the same water to make a snowman, you still have it is still not the original snowman. It is a copy of the snowman.
Okay, here we go.
So now we're getting into nature versus nurture for snowmen.
Yes, absolutely.
You start bringing a bunch of snowmen to life, and if you treat them all the same, then they're likely to all have the same kind of personalities.
Ooh,
but
it's possible.
If you start bringing a bunch of snowmen to life, maybe they're just blank slates. And if you have a bunch of very high-spirited children that are excited for a living snowman and they will treat him nicely, then he'll turn into a Frosty. Or if you just have one very crabby middle-aged man who has a golf club and a pipe and just sticks those as his arm, not like a smoking pipe. I mean like a PVC pipe. And that's both nature and nurture there, because you start out with the pipe and the golf club, so you're sort of predisposed to enjoying those two things. But it's also the nature of the fact that this old crabby man is just jamming random things he found in the garage into the snowman's body. So it's going to color your view.
I have a very dumb pitch that I just need to get out there.
Can't be any dumber than the thing I just said.
Oh, I don't know. I just very much want the title of this episode to be The Jolly Prometheus.
Yes.
Okay.
So now we also, with what Jim is saying, we also then have to come back to the question of, is it this power source, or the hat, or is the Frosty derived from the people creating it? Are we, and by extension those children, simply playing God?
What? I have written down in my notes, it's similar to the Twilight Zone. It is not an emotion, it is not a magic hat, it is the power of imagination. So, and that is not intended to be a dismissive answer. It is genuinely an answer.
Is the imagination that the snowman's not alive at all, and they're just pretending it is?
Well, so that's why I said I didn't mean it to be a dismissive answer. I think in the canon, or in the lore, it is genuinely that children have the power to give life to things through their imagination.
Yeah. And then we kind of have to come back to then, like you brought up earlier, is it the snow? Is it the artifacts they're using that, determines the personality? Or is it simply they were looking for someone to match their own joy? And so that is what then creates a joyful, and albeit a bit manic, Frosty.
Yeah.
I want to explore the idea, just in brief, I suppose, of I feel like the thing that we keep skirting around, and I feel like maybe the question wanted us to get to, was the idea that with perhaps like bitterness or anger or something like that, you could get the evil snowman that we were talking about. And I want to point out, if that were the case, what you're suggesting here, that the children have this joy and they want this snowman to match their level of joy, I think it might be something that is subconscious as well, because I can't think of a person who would deliberately make a snowman that would be mean to them.
Sure.
Like if someone is feeling sad or angry, they're making that snowman to cheer themselves up.
Sure.
So does that mean they're just not able to?
Or is it that they create something that reflects what they are doing to themselves? So
there's that.
You bring up, like, obviously you're not going to create a Frosty or a snowman. We'll make it more generic. That will then come alive and start berating you.
Right.
But let's say you're building the snowman while constantly replaying in your head your latest argument with a loved one, and you're beating yourself up for it. And then this thing comes to life and starts doing the same thing.
I think
because it becomes a reflection of the inside rather than what you're necessarily putting into it.
That's interesting on the level of even the children who make Frosty, who is joyful and manic. The idea that it is still something that is dangerous to do. Like, because Frosty, though Frosty is a benevolent person, is still causing problems that the children did not expect. Right. So that's fascinating to me.
Yeah, because again, we come back to like the original lyrics, and like with the second verse, which most people don't really pay attention to the second verse.
There's not a second.
But like he literally basically just goes, well, let's run around, let's have some fun before I die, before I melt. And he just runs through the village screaming, "Catch me if you can," until a traffic cop literally has to tell him to stop.
Interesting.
And then Frosty continues running around and then says goodbye.
Is Frosty related to the gingerbread man, do you think? Run as fast as you can. You can't catch me.
It could be.
That's nothing. That's nothing.
I mean,
I don't know.
They might have both been brought to life the same way.
But that's an amazing segue.
Sure is an amazing segue.
Is, isn't it?
Let me break kayfabe here just to make sure. Does anybody have anything they wanted to say? Because that is a very good segue.
I just want to say they could be related to each other because they are both magical creatures that were brought to life. One doesn't have a hat, but that's okay because it's still magic.
And again, because we come back to which artifact? Like, do you believe it's the artifacts or do you believe it's the magic of creation?
Right.
Or maybe it's the snowmen we built along the way.
Hey.
Yeah, but speaking of gingerbread, yeah, it's too good. It's too good not to use.
That's why, I thought that was you saying, "All right, let's wrap this up. Let's move on."
It genuinely wasn't that time. Yeah, we actually have a second question this week, and it pertains to gingerbread. Could you make a completely edible, full-size house out of gingerbread and candy?
Man, I wish it didn't say completely edible.
That's the part. So I want to say it would still even be hard, depending on your primary building material. I feel like has to be gingerbread.
Absolutely.
I think it would still be hard even with not completely edible materials.
Yeah. I mean, well,
yeah.
Here's the thing. So I found out something fascinating about this, that I say they, where was it? It was the Fairmont in San Francisco, actually built a 2-story gingerbread house. They spent a lot of time baking bricks out of gingerbread, like basically cinder block sized bricks. But the thing is that I think that's the only part that would have been technically edible. And also, when you bake gingerbread into a brick, I don't think it's going to be particularly appetizing or easy to take apart.
No.
In order for a gingerbread house to be 2 stories and hold up its own weight, that has to be the driest. It has to be basically an adobe brick at that point. And no one's eating adobe bricks.
The question doesn't specify it needs to be appetizing.
That's true. I mean, in that case,
edible.
Yeah, in that case, you could make it out of shaving cream for the frosting. That's technically edible. I don't think you're going to die from it.
Well, then we get into... So we must define our terms here, because as the old adage goes, everything is edible once.
Oh, touché.
I feel like we need to... I guess we don't need to. We can go anywhere you want, but I want to try to explore things that are traditionally food items.
Agreed.
Okay.
Because I've actually put a bit of thought into this, and actually have talked with a couple of my coworkers about it as well, who are maybe a bit more engineering minded. So I think it is possible.
Okay.
And actually, it wouldn't even take making, you mentioned about the Fairmonts, as you put it, cinder block bricks. No. I think you make it out of normal, thin gingerbread. But you layer it like brick.
Okay.
So you lay down a run of, let's say, postcard sized pieces of gingerbread, lay down a layer of icing, and then you start like brick layering the next layer so that it covers the joints of the layered bricks. And then you just keep going vertically until you have a house. Now, the hard part's going to be the roof. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
My thought on that is you actually end up building a flat roof.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
but then what you can do is once you have the flat kind of roof base, you can then actually start layering till you get your peak.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't see the thing that Jim brought up about somebody actually building this two-story house. And I didn't think about making it into bricks. I was picturing big sheets of basically drywall sheets.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing worth mentioning about that is that it was in the lobby of the hotel, so it's not like it was outdoors in the woods and the elements, you know.
Right.
Yeah, that is another aspect worth exploring. But so when I was picturing just like your walls are prefabricated, if that's the case, which I don't think is the right way to do it, but it does mean that it would necessitate to build a house, you would need to treat it more like traditionally building a house, in which case your peaked roof, as Joe is describing, this would all be done with a frame. Is that frame made of gingerbread, or is there another material? And I'm looking at how big could we theoretically make like a peppermint stick candy cane type thing. Which might make something like that.
Or, I would say same vein as the peppermint, you could also go like Werther's caramel, how it's nice and hard.
Okay,
yeah. But because it's made in a similar fashion.
Yeah, sure. It's like hardtack kind of.
Yeah. But yeah, I could see that working.
One thing I just wanted to throw in there, which I think is the easiest thing about this whole process based on everything I've thought through, is that making windows, you could easily make them out of a sugar glass.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Which are very fragile, but technically windows, like, you shouldn't be hitting them anyway because they're still going to break.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, the thing that I was trying to figure out, and I'll be honest, I didn't actually come up with a good option other than just more gingerbread. Doors.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the hardest part about doors is putting a hinge on them, which just means...
What about if you made like well, actually you could make a door, like a sliding door out of sugar glass maybe. I was actually thinking rice paper, like a Japanese style sliding door.
I didn't think about rice paper.
Oh, I didn't either.
Yeah, I was thinking like cottage or cabin, but you could...
So, question, is rice paper technically edible?
I mean, in the same way that regular paper is. I don't know, let's Google it.
Well, even if it isn't like a traditional food thing, I know there are like thin noodles that you could theoretically...
Well, I was actually just going to say like nori sheets.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah, rice paper is edible.
Oh, perfect.
But, I mean, nori sheets work too. Boy. What about like that, oh, wait. That's even better. What if you make it out of like flat rock candy, which I guess is the same as sugar glass, but then you get some flavor in it?
Then you get flavor.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there's another. Do we need flavor for this whole thing?
I mean, you might as well. In for a penny, in for a pound.
If we're gonna stray away from this being the holiday themed episode, I mean, you might want it to taste good if you're trying to lure children to eat it, right? If you're a witch. That's the other gingerbread house I can think of.
That's fair.
Yeah. But then I do have to ask the question that I know we probably don't want to even think about with the monstrosity of difficulty that this question already presents.
Bring it on. I want to think about it.
Is it the ants? Because you're going to get ants.
I technically, no, it's, where do we build it?
Yeah.
Well, I think it has to either be in a hotel lobby or in the middle of the woods. There's no in between.
There's no in between.
So, well, here's the thing. Okay, let's say middle of the woods, because we're not going to do it in a hotel lobby.
I don't own a hotel lobby.
So now the question is, what region do we want to build it in? Do we try and go with like somewhere perpetually cold, but then we have to also make sure that it can survive, rain and snow? Or do we build it more, like a temperate forest, but again, you're gonna have to deal with rain. Or do we maybe go with like a desert where it's constantly dry, except now you've got to worry about your candy pieces melting?
Oh, well, what if you did it in one of the world's driest deserts, if not maybe the driest desert, Antarctica?
That's the answer, I think. Well, so as soon as you bring up cold, I was thinking of something we've talked about a little bit, like the ice hotels and igloos and stuff.
True.
And while there isn't a permanent structure of an ice hotel, the fact that even if the gingerbread gets moist because it's snowing, it's going to freeze solid.
Mm-hmm.
It is going to make it harder to work with, though. So it would be... My thinking is like if we fashioned some kind of candy nails and other sorts of fasteners.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking more like a mortar would probably be better for... I think that the brick idea is not a bad idea, because then you don't have to use nails. You can like mortar things together. You can glue them with some kind of like frosting.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was using like an icing in theory.
If the end goal is to do essentially the igloo idea, like you could make a gingerbread igloo with just a walled structure.
Yeah.
But there's gonna, if we're including windows, if we're including doors, there's gonna be things that need to be attached, and working on them in this climate is going to make them like shatter more than moldable.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Because Antarctica can get to be down to like well below negative 50 degrees Fahrenheit. I did find out, this sounds like a joke, but it's not, that there are no ants in Antarctica, in spite of being called Antarctica.
No ants in Antarctica.
Yeah. I like that that's the sentence I got to say, because I'd never thought about this in the past, and I was like, it makes sense that there's not any, but it is called Antarctica. And I know that's not why it's called Antarctica, but it's so good.
It's because it opposes the Arctic, isn't
it? Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But
it's the anti-Arctic.
Yeah, it's not the Antarctic, it is the anti-Arctic.
Yeah.
English is weird, guys.
Yeah.
Well, it's a hodgepodge language. So.
Yeah. I think Antarctica is the place to do this. And the thing is that you can light a really nice fire inside of there, because it'll just dry the bricks out, you know. If they're thick enough to hold the house up, then that heat should stay in pretty okay. And you could probably get away with, hanging out in there for the summer months in Antarctica at worst. And then maybe migrate out with the other 3,000 people in the winter.
Now, the other thing we didn't specify in the wording of this question is, like, it has to be completely edible, but do people need to be able to live in it?
Oh.
Because I don't know that they do.
I was assuming yes.
I also was, yeah.
I mean, I think most people were, which is why I bring it up.
But I also jumped into it with the knowledge that there were very few situations where we could actually make it happen for more than like a day or two.
Well, and I was also under the impression that, like, while it has to be theoretically livable, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be perfectly suited to its environment.
Ooh, right. Yeah, it might not be a place someone wants to live.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if we're talking about Antarctica, for example, I would not expect, the people living there to necessarily walk around, let's say, in their undies after a shower.
Right.
It would be a situation of it almost becomes an experimental home where you see how long people can live there in the frigid temperatures, but while still in these like massive snow coats. And basically it's just trying to see how long it takes before hypothermia potentially sets in.
Quick, let's go to a television network and pitch our reality show here.
The sad thing is we might be able to get funding for it. It's crazy enough.
Yeah.
5 people live in a gingerbread house. See how long they can survive before they get hypothermia.
Yeah. Get eaten by penguins.
5 hours later. The show is over, guys.
The show is over. We didn't get a lot of footage.
Oh, we got a ton of footage, because you would have their training up until they leave.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You'd have them getting there. And then you would split every hour into an hour-long episode because people are going to be glued to their televisions to see how bad it is. And then you have an episode afterward of them leaving. So that's 3 episodes for training, 1 episode for travel, 5 episodes for the 5 hours in the house, and then a 2-hour live episode afterward.
Mm-hmm. That is the funeral.
Of them talking about their experience.
Oh, okay.
So that's 10 episodes, an hour each, except for the last one. So that's 11 hours of television.
That's the season, right there.
Yeah,
there's your season.
That's more than you get with some Netflix series that are actually very good because they will cancel them immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So not cheap to make.
Like The Acolyte.
I thought you were going to say that at the end that they all died and there would be like another 20 hours of footage of the court trials.
I thought too, yeah.
Like the case.
No. I am assuming that we are responsible and pull them out as hypothermia sets in.
Okay.
Well, then we probably shouldn't be the ones involved.
We also have to protect our crew who's there.
Ah, yeah.
Oh, true, yeah.
But I'd say the crew probably gets to stay in. We would probably partner with one of the local quote unquote research facilities.
Mm-hmm.
That way, everyone who's not a part of this crazy experiment can stay relatively warm.
Yeah.
And then you just swap out cameramen every 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Stay tuned, listeners, for the announcement of the vaguely scientific reality TV show Experiment. Go do crowdfunding.
I mean, Amazon just wrapped up with the Grand Tour, so they need something really, really stupid to fill that gap.
Yeah. What do we want to call it? It's got to be something really witty.
Oh, boy.
Kind of snappy. Because, I mean, there's always to potentially invite litigation from Disney. Frosty with a chance.
Does Disney own Frosty?
No, it's a parody of a title on one of their television series, Cloudy with a Chance.
Oh, okay.
That's related to Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, right?
Well, no, because actually that was...
I think that's legally distinct enough.
DreamWorks.
Then. Yeah.
Is it? Okay.
I think that's legally distinct.
My follow-up question was going to be, or my follow-up statement was going to be, I didn't know that was Disney.
I'm sorry. Sunny with a Chance was the name of the Disney show. Sunny with a Chance.
Oh, that's like one of those high school Disney Channel shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of that. Sunny with a Chance.
Yeah, it was kind of a show within a show.
Yeah.
Because it was Demi Lovato was starring in a show called So Random, but the Sunny with a Chance was the story of her getting onto the show.
Yeah,
and it ran for a couple of seasons, and then she wanted to leave, and so they actually started the show So Random as an actual show.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's actually where, ironically, to swing all the way back to The Chosen, that is actually where Shane Topp from Smosh got his start, was on So Random.
It's all a big circle.
And he is who plays The Chosen on Smosh.
Now we need to make one slightly smaller circle and then one even smaller circle than that, and we will have a snowman.
Yeah. and then we have to determine what his personality will be.
Yeah.
And he can live in our gingerbread house in Antarctica.
Exactly.
That works.
He can be who maintains it while we're not filming.
He's the groundskeeper. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, listeners, we have one more question this week, and this one's going to be fun, I think. Question 3 this week. What obscure piece of media do you want to see represented in a Hallmark ornament?
Muppet Christmas Carol.
Oh.
Because I'm sorry, you give me Michael Caine as Ebenezer Scrooge, and it is a win in my book. Period.
I can get behind that. Yeah.
Oh, I'm looking up what comes up if I type in Muppet Christmas Carol ornament.
Oh.
Oh,
not what I expected. Like less. I expected tons of just very merchandised like things. And
the movie came out in what, 92 or 93?
I think so. Yeah.
So I'm actually not that surprised that there is basically no ornaments left for it anymore. Like
I'm a little surprised.
When the movie first came out, I remember there were some.
A lot of stuff on Etsy.
But at this point, it's probably just going to be a bunch of Etsy stuff.
I'm a little surprised there aren't too many ornaments, just because the nostalgia ornament market has started to expand quite a bit. And
fair.
So like things like a lot of the early Muppet movies, I feel are coming back around into the cultural zeitgeist. So I'm kind of surprised they haven't tried capitalizing on that yet.
I mean, the reason that I thought that as well is that Muppet Christmas Carol is as prevalent in my mind as like the Peanuts Christmas special.
Oh yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. And that still has like that is just for sale every year.
Yep.
There's Snoopy everywhere.
The thing I think is interesting about this question is that the ones that I keep thinking of aren't explicitly obscure, but they are things that don't have Hallmark ornaments yet. And the one that kind of surprised me, because I had to look this up because I was like, maybe I missed this, is Kirby. There is not a Kirby Hallmark ornament yet, in spite of the fact that there are ornaments for most of Nintendo's other major video game franchises.
That was going to be my question, because Nintendo is kind of notorious for being picky about what merchandises their IPs.
There have been several Mario ones. I know there was a Link one at some point, and I got a Metroid one, of all things. I would not have ever expected that they would make a Samus ornament before they would make Kirby.
That's weird, because Kirby is literally a sphere.
Yeah, it is. You could make a Kirby and just like paste some arms and legs on it, and you'd be good to go. There's an Etsy one that's like one of those glass balls that's just pink and has Kirby's face on it. You could do that. That would be free, basically.
This isn't necessarily something I want, but it was kind of a natural thought that I had as soon as we asked this question, because I first went to, I bet there are tons of Halloween themed Christmas ornaments. Such as like Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees. And like, I just know those exist without even looking it up.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. It's not obscure in its home country, but I would love to see K-pop.
Oh. Surely there's a BTS Christmas ornament from Hallmark. There has to be.
I don't think there is.
Wow, there does not appear to be. There's
Amazon
Etsy again.
Is going to recommend all these things to me,
and especially like now for myself, I'm more a fan of. Oh boy, here we go. K-pop is separated into effectively what are called generations of stars.
Oh,
and
like
we're
Star
currently
Trek.
We're currently in the fourth generation. So like I would love to see like Stray Kids get a Hallmark ornament of some kind. Who are my personal favorite band.
My personal favorite is still from Gen 1, and it is Haunter.
Touché, sir.
I thought you were going to say something a little bit different when you were saying not obscure in its home country, because I thought you were going to say Gundam. And in the last
He's
5...
not you.
Well, I mean, yeah, but... Because I know that Joe likes Gundam.
I do. I do.
A lot of people like Gundam, but only Jim is Jim.
Because in the last 5 years, Gundam has gotten quite a bit more prevalent in the United States, to the point where there is now a Netflix show that was made specifically for Netflix. And it's a little surprising given some of the weird things that Hallmark has made in the past that we don't have a Gundam yet. But that could be a licensing thing, because Bandai is weird about their merchandise.
Weirdly enough, they are kind of in the same vein as Disney in how protective they are at times of their IPs.
Well, because the big reason why we didn't get any Gundam for years and years in America was because, like, oh, well, it doesn't sell well in America. And as soon as they put out one thing and it was, like, on the New York Times bestseller list, they were like, oh, I guess we better do this again.
Yeah.
Like, they had to be dragged kicking and screaming back into the United States.
Yeah. But, like, if, for example, if you right now go look at the Hallmark's website, there are some of these that are, in my opinion, kind of ridiculous, that these have gotten holiday keepsakes and holiday ornaments over some of the stuff we've talked about so far. Like, for example, the original Xbox console is getting one this year.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. They actually made a Nintendo and a Super Nintendo as well.
Yes. Here's the thing. Weirdly enough, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, those I understand.
Mm-hmm.
The Xbox seems a little too new. But then you mentioned about Halloween stuff. There's Nightmare Before Christmas stuff now.
Sure.
There's a Golden Girls television.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. They also did, over the last 4 years, the actual 4 Golden Girls, and I have all 4 of those.
That's fair.
Golden Girls is not obscure anymore. It is apparently catapulted into the mainstream once again somehow.
It's very meme popular, I think.
Yeah. I don't even know if it's that. I think it's just it's one of those shows that aged really, really well. Kind of like in the same vein of like Cheers and Frasier, where it's like for the time it was made, it was actually quite like forward thinking. And so now it's popular again.
But yeah, so
that happened with The Office.
That's true. But that's not nearly as old.
No, but it's like older than, like, it got popular maybe 5 or 6 years after it had like kind of ended, and so that's interesting how that happens.
Yeah.
In about another 20 years, it'll have the same treatment that Golden Girls is getting right now.
I mean, probably.
I would think so, at least.
Well, if we're gonna stick on sitcoms, because I'm struggling to think of something that is genuinely obscure.
Taxi.
I think of it's hard to think when I is this obscure? No, everybody knows what this is.
Right. Yeah. That's the thing, is like I say Gundam and it's not obscure. Like, that's
right. Gundam's a very popular franchise.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think, I mean, if I can tangent off the questions, just say I think this series needs more love. Third Rock from the Sun.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite sitcoms.
That's a great one, honestly.
Yeah, that's a good one. Oh, boy. I'm trying to think of some other, like, of all things, 90s sitcoms. Did anyone here ever watch, which one was it that had... I don't know any of the actors' names, but it was like set at a fashion magazine or something. Maybe it was Just Shoot Me.
Just Shoot Me, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very good show.
Yeah, I remember liking it when I was a kid.
David Spade and George Segal or Siegel. I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
Yeah, I actually did not watch it, but I am familiar with it.
Yeah, I remember enjoying it, although to be fair, it was like, 30 years ago. So, oh, wait,
True.
Nope, they have an ornament for that. Never mind. I was going to say Space Ghost, but I own the Space Ghost ornament.
The Space Ghost ornament. Okay, so I want to say all of the traditional pieces from Monopoly need their own ornament.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting, because I know that there are Monopoly ornaments, but they're generally like the board and the Monopoly Man.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think the individual pieces need just their own spotlight.
Need some love. Oh, well, that just destroyed one I was going to bring up. As I'm looking through the Keepsake site, and I was going to say, what I haven't seen that I legitimately think needs some love is Kingdom Hearts.
That doesn't have an ornament?
I did find one of King Mickey in his organization cloak, but that's been the only one I've seen so far. But that still means, though, that they have one.
I'd say Nadesco, but nobody else.
Ooh, yeah. Nadesco would be good.
There's some really cool character designs in Nadesco.
I would argue Nadesco is would fit the obscure criteria.
It's pretty obscure.
Yeah.
It's less obscure than I would have assumed, insofar as they still make merch for it, even though it's been 25 years or more. I think it's pushing 30 now, because that was, 97? So they're still making merch for it. It can't be as obscure as I think it is, but it's pretty obscure.
Just because the people who are fanatic about it are, like, very far apart.
Just me.
I know two. I know you and I know Jonathan. Those are the two people.
Oh, I forgot about Jonathan.
Yeah. I don't know anyone else who has told me they know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So,
there you go.
One more that's not obscure at all, but I have not seen any sort of Hallmark for it in the past or present.
Okay.
Formula One.
Oh wow,
that must exist. I don't know. I don't follow it, but
I wonder if in other countries maybe they've had them.
And that's fair. There might be in European countries, since it's much more popular in Europe compared to the US.
Yeah.
But Formula One, I am surprised we haven't gotten any here.
Yeah. Especially since it has gotten quite a bit more popular in the last 5 to 10 years. So maybe soon.
The original Kaneko Man. I'm going to go with that. That's the most obscure thing I can think of. I liked it more than I expected to, but that is a thing that nobody knows what that is anymore.
There's also one or two things that I can think of that I know are obscure, but it's like I wouldn't really want an ornament of that. So, there was this cartoon. I assume it's from the 80s. It was called Centurions Power Extreme, and I have not found it to watch it again, like anywhere. But it was like an 80s action cartoon where these 3 dudes would like have power armor beamed down to them to fight bad guys. Like there was a lot of robots and cyborgs and stuff that were trying to take over the world.
Was it like a tokusatsu kind of show?
I don't know if I would necessarily even go that route, because it was not the power armor was not like a solid suit. It was more like they were wearing a thing that had hard points on it, and weapons would then attach to those hard points that are beamed down from a space station.
Interesting.
They get little transformation sequences and stuff. And there was the one guy who was like all land-based stuff, and the water guy and the air guy. And I can't even like find an episode to watch. It might be, I haven't looked in a while, so maybe it's on YouTube by now. But last time I looked, which was like around 2021 or so, wasn't anywhere online.
Well,
you can find the intro though.
Well, listeners, let us know, what are your favorite ornaments that you have,
and could you live in them?
And are they made of edible material? Yeah. So if you have thoughts on that, or really anything else that we talked about in this episode or any other episode, you can email us at feedback@vaguelyscientific.com. And you can also comment on our blog on the website, or you can like us on Facebook and send us a message there. You can tweet at vaguelysci. In the meantime, hey, Jim, where do we get all these wacky questions?
We get them from you, the listener, and if you have a question that needs to be answered in a vaguely scientific manner, please email us at questions@vaguelyscientific.com. If you want to get our episodes the minute that they're released, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and all the other cool places that podcasts like to hang out. And subscribing and leaving feedback really helps us out, and so does telling your friends.
Tell all your friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Our vaguely musical intro is composed by Anthony Pizzelli. And don't forget to check out our merch store over at vaguelyscientific.threadless.com. I don't actually know when this episode is coming out, so we might have missed Christmas, or maybe we didn't. Either way.
It's the week leading up to Christmas.
Maybe you have time to get some stuff for your closest friends and family off of our Vaguely Scientific Threadless store. You could always get them a nice mug to put some cocoa in. That's perfect Christmas stuff.
And I always like pointing this out. This year, 2024, the first day of Hanukkah is the first day of Christmas.
Ooh, interesting. That's pretty cool. It doesn't sync up like that too often.
Not all the time. I just like knowing when it is.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so thank you to Joe for being our guest this week.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you guys for having me, and obviously to both of you and to everyone listening, Merry Christmas.
Yay! For Vaguely Scientific, I am Derek.
I'm Jim.
I've been Joe.
And I wish you peace, goodwill, and abundance of mirth and merriment, and a very Merry Christmas.
Toodaloo 2024.
Yeah.
Ho, 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 ho.
Right? There's not another episode after this one this year, right?
No, the next one is on New Year's Day, so.
Oh, perfect. All right,
Yeah.
I did it right then. Bye, everyone.
You did.
Well, Santa's getting lazy.
Is he?
Well, because we have to help him, and we're incompetent.
I don't know if that's showing poor judgment, perhaps. I don't know, lazy.
Oh, that's a good point, yeah. You know what?